fashion for me is part of living and part of your impression of who you are and what you want to say about yourself.
He built a billion-dollar empire on button-downs, blazers, and a vision of effortless American style. Yet even Ralph Lauren had figures he looked at and thought, now that's style. At 87, the designer reflects on the icons who shaped his eye, and the names are striking. From a rebellious princess to Hollywood's leading man, these five were more than well-dressed. They embodied what Lauren chased his whole career: confidence, individuality, and magnetism. So grab a seat as we explore the five style icons who caught Ralph Lauren's attention today. Princess Diana. Elegance that actually evolved. Let's start with the name that probably surprises people the most: Princess Diana. Now, when people think royal style icon, they usually picture someone frozen in time, a single iconic dress, one signature look. But according to the tribute circulating online, what actually caught Lauren's attention about Diana wasn't a single outfit. It was the fact that her style kept changing, kept growing, right alongside who she was becoming as a person. Think about the difference between shy, 20-year-old Diana in those frumpy, high-necked blouses from the early 80s and the Diana of the 90s, sharp blazers, bold colors, that infamous revenge dress she wore the same night Prince Charles publicly admitted to an affair. Allegedly, that transformation, watching someone use fashion as a form of quiet rebellion, is exactly the kind of thing that would appeal to a designer like Lauren, who has spent his career selling not just clothes, but a version of who you could become if you wore them. Diana didn't just wear elegant outfits, she used elegance as armor, then, eventually, as a weapon. And can we talk about the range for a second? This is a woman who could show up in a formal Catherine Walker gown for a state dinner one week, and then be photographed the next in an oversized sweatshirt and sneakers doing the school run. And both looks somehow became iconic. That duality, being the most photographed woman on Earth and still feeling relatable, is nearly impossible to pull off. Sources suggest that's precisely the kind of authenticity Lauren claims to chase in his own designs. There's also the timing to consider. Diana came of age in an era when royal style was supposed to be rigid, predictable, almost costume-like. She quietly broke that mold piece by piece, swapping stiff formality for softer tailoring and silhouettes that actually moved with her instead of against her. That willingness to bend the rules without ever fully breaking them is reportedly a huge part of why her style still gets dissected today, decades after her passing. Even her more understated choices carried weight. Simple blazers, tailored trousers, a plain white shirt. On Diana, those pieces stopped being boring and started being aspirational because people could picture themselves wearing them. That's the exact effect Lauren has spent his career trying to engineer. Clothes ordinary people could imagine slipping into and instantly feeling more confident. And there's a business lesson tucked inside all of this too. Diana never needed a stylist standing over her shoulder dictating every choice. Reportedly, some of her most talked-about looks came from her own instincts, even when the palace establishment raised an eyebrow. That kind of self-trust is rare in any public figure, let alone one under the kind of scrutiny Diana faced daily. It's the sort of instinct designers spend careers trying to teach, and it apparently can't actually be taught at all. So the real question is, was Diana's evolving style actually about fashion at all? Or was it the closest thing she had to a diary the whole world could read? Steve McQueen, the king of cool who barely tried. Next up, the name that probably makes the most sense on paper: Steve McQueen. If there was ever a human embodiment of, "I woke up like this," it was him. The story goes that Lauren has always pointed to McQueen as proof that style isn't about how much money you spend or how hard you try. It's about confidence. McQueen could throw on a beat-up leather jacket, plain chinos, and a crew-neck sweater and somehow look more put together than a man in a three-piece suit. Here's the thing people forget. McQueen wasn't a fashion guy. He wasn't sitting front row at runway shows or working with stylists. He was a race car driver who happened to be one of the biggest movie stars on the planet. And he dressed like someone who genuinely did not care what anyone thought, which, ironically, is exactly why everyone couldn't stop looking at him. Turtlenecks, suede desert boots, a battered field jacket. And reportedly, that's the exact energy Lauren has spent decades trying to bottle into a brand. Think about it. Polo isn't about logos plastered everywhere. It's about looking like you were born into old money, even if you were a kid from the Bronx, which, plot twist, Lauren actually was. Sources close to the fashion world have long pointed to McQueen's off-duty style, the stuff he wore between takes on movies like Bullet, as basically a blueprint for the entire effortless American cool aesthetic Lauren built his career on. There's also the polo connection people love to bring up. The Thomas Crown Affair, the 1968 heist film where McQueen plays a bored millionaire who robs banks for fun, features an entire scene built around a polo match. Tailored blazers, sunglasses, all that quiet money swagger. It's basically a 2-hour mood board for what Ralph Lauren would go on to sell for the next 5 decades. Ralph Lauren's own team has publicly listed The Thomas Crown Affair among the designer's favorite films, citing that polo scene specifically. And it wasn't just the clothes. It was the attitude underneath them. McQueen had a reputation, both on and off screen, of never seeming to perform for the camera. There was zero separation between movie star McQueen and regular guy McQueen. He wore the same rugged jackets and simple knits, whether he was at a press junket or fixing a car engine in his garage. That consistency is rare, and it's exactly the sort of thing a designer spends a career chasing but can never quite manufacture. People also forget how much of McQueen's look was built on things that were never meant to be fashion statements in the first place. Military surplus jackets, racing gloves, sunglasses he wore because the sun was in his eyes, not because a stylist put them on him. That utilitarian, borrowed from real-life quality is something menswear writers still reference today when they talk about the roots of Americana style. And it's not hard to draw a straight line from that idea to an entire Ralph Lauren category built around rugged, ranch-inspired basics. There's even an argument that McQueen's garage and racetrack wardrobe influenced Lauren more than any runway ever could. None of it was designed to be looked at, and yet all of it somehow was. That contradiction. Clothes made purely for use becoming the most desirable clothes in the room might be the single most Ralph Lauren idea there is. So here's a question worth sitting with. If the most powerful style statement is the one that looks like you didn't try at all, why do so many of us feel like we have to try so hard? Jackie Kennedy Onassis, the woman who redefined what American elegance even meant. Up next, Jackie Kennedy Onassis, who might honestly be the most fitting name of all 5, considering Lauren has spent his entire career trying to define and sell American elegance as a concept. If anyone actually embodied that phrase before it became a marketing buzzword, it was her. Think about the sheer range of Jackie's public life. She went from Jackie Kennedy, the impossibly polished First Lady in her pillbox hats and boxy Chanel-inspired suits, to Jackie Onassis, the sunglasses and headscarf paparazzi target, strolling around Manhattan, trying to just live a normal life. And both versions somehow still feel current today, which says a lot considering we're talking about style choices from more than 60 years ago. What reportedly stood out to Lauren wasn't just that Jackie looked polished. Plenty of people in her position looked polished. It was that she made polish look completely uncomplicated. No fuss, no obvious effort, just clean lines and an understanding of exactly what worked for her. She wasn't chasing trends. If anything, the trends were chasing her. There's also something to be said about the timing. Jackie was defining a new kind of American sophistication at almost the exact moment a young Ralph Lauren was starting to dream up what would eventually become Polo. The optimism, the crispness, the mix of old money references with something distinctly American rather than borrowed from Europe. That's Jackie's fingerprint all over it. Think about her most enduring looks for a second. The structured skirt suits, the oversized sunglasses, the simple headscarves. None of it was overly ornate. All of it was built around clean lines and quality fabric doing the heavy lifting instead of embellishment. That's a near-perfect description of the entire Ralph Lauren catalog, decades before the brand ever existed in its current form. And there's something almost eerie about how well her personal style has aged. Look at old photographs of Jackie strolling through Manhattan in a simple trench coat and headscarf, sunglasses on, nothing performative about it, and it could genuinely be mistaken for a street-style photo taken last week. Most looks from the 60s feel dated the moment you see them. Hers somehow never do, which might be the single strongest argument for why she belongs on this list at all. There's one more detail worth sitting with. Jackie reportedly favored a handful of trusted designers and wore pieces on repeat rather than chasing an endless rotation of new outfits. That philosophy, buy fewer things but make sure they're exactly right, is the near opposite of fast fashion. And it lines up almost perfectly with the buy it once, wear it forever ethos Lauren has built his entire brand around. So here's a final thought to leave you with. Is it possible that American elegance, the exact phrase Lauren has built a literal empire around, wouldn't even exist in the form we know it today without her? Cary Grant, the man who taught him what a suit should feel like. Now, this next one isn't just industry gossip. This connection is actually well documented, and it might be the most personal relationship on this entire list. Cary Grant and Ralph Lauren were genuinely, verifiably friends. Early in his career, long before Polo was a household name, a young Lauren started sending Cary Grant ties. Unsolicited, just mailing them straight to his office in Los Angeles. They were simple, solid, gray ties, the kind people around Lauren's office started calling Cary Grant ties. And here's the part that sounds made up but genuinely happened. Grant actually called him. He phoned Lauren personally to thank him for the ties, and the two hit it off from there, eventually sharing lunches in New York and a day together at the races in Los Angeles. This wasn't a fan moment or a one-time photo op. Lauren has said they'd talk about the people Grant loved, how Grant got his own start, and where his sense of style actually came from. They apparently even got deep into the weeds together. Lauren has recalled a full conversation about jacket lapels. Think about that for a second. Cary Grant is, to this day, basically shorthand for impeccably dressed man. Decades after his films came out, people still study his suits and the way a jacket hung on his shoulders in North by Northwest. And this is the guy debating lapel width with a 20-something tie salesman who hadn't built his empire yet. It's not hard to see why Grant made this list. His whole persona was quiet sophistication. Never flashy, never overdone. Just polished in a way that looked completely natural. No stunt, no gimmick. Just a man who knew exactly how a suit was supposed to fit and never felt the need to prove it. That restraint became a cornerstone of everything Lauren would go on to build. And the friendship apparently didn't stop at ties and lapels. Grant's fingerprints are all over the DNA of the Ralph Lauren brand in ways most people never clock. That transatlantic ease, the way Grant could wear a simple gray suit and somehow look richer than a man dripping in gold jewelry, is basically the entire philosophy behind Polo's menswear line. Understated over flashy. Quality over quantity. A single well-made tie over a closet full of forgettable ones. There's even a bit of poetic symmetry here, once you dig into Grant's own story. Grant himself has talked about how his own sense of style was shaped by watching an elegantly dressed man on the ship that first brought him to America as a young immigrant chasing an acting career. So in a way, Lauren wasn't just learning from Grant directly. He was inheriting a whole lineage of understated elegance that had already been passed down once before he ever mailed that first tie. It's also worth pointing out how unlikely this whole friendship was. Grant was already one of the biggest movie stars in the world while Lauren was still building his tie business from the ground up. He had no real reason to call back a young salesman he'd never met, let alone stay close with him for years afterward. That he did says something about both men: Grant's willingness to spot real talent, and Lauren's ability to make an impression with nothing more than a simple gray tie and a good eye. So here's the thing worth wondering. How many of us get to actually meet the person who shaped our entire worldview, let alone become genuine friends with them? Audrey Hepburn. Beauty that time somehow forgot to touch. And finally, rounding out the list, Audrey Hepburn. If Cary Grant represents the men's side of Lauren's style Bible, Hepburn is very clearly the women's counterpart. And this one is also backed by real, documented history, not just online lore. Hepburn didn't just influence Lauren from a distance. She occupies what's been described as a prominent spot in his own personal pantheon of Hollywood heroines. And the two had an actual professional and personal connection that culminated in one seriously full-circle moment. In 1992, Audrey Hepburn presented Ralph Lauren with the very first Lifetime Achievement Award ever given out by the CFDA, the Council of Fashion Designers of America. Think about how symbolic that is, the single greatest fashion honor of his career, handed to him by the same woman whose style he'd quietly admired for decades. She reportedly even wrote the introduction for one of his major fashion monographs. And honestly, it makes total sense why she'd be on this list. Hepburn's whole thing was understated glamour. She wasn't the loudest or most over-the-top actress of her era, but somehow she became the most referenced style icon in the history of Hollywood. Breakfast at Tiffany's alone gave the world an entire vocabulary of elegance: the little black dress, the oversized sunglasses, the pearls. She made restraint look like the most luxurious thing in the world, which is basically the entire Ralph Lauren philosophy in one sentence. What's wild is that Hepburn wasn't even trying to sell an image the way modern celebrities do. She wore what she liked, worked closely with designers like Givenchy because she trusted them, and let her natural elegance do the rest. There was nothing manufactured about it, which is exactly why it's held up for over 6 decades, while so many other iconic looks from that era have not. There's also the way she carried herself off-screen that people tend to forget about. Hepburn wasn't chasing headlines. Later in life, she poured most of her time into humanitarian work with UNICEF, often photographed in the simplest possible outfits. No gowns, no jewelry, just quiet, practical clothing while working in some of the poorest regions of the world. That contrast, glamorous screen icon by day and humble humanitarian by choice, reportedly deepened Lauren's respect for her even further. It reinforced the idea that real elegance isn't about the clothes at all. It's about what you do with the attention those clothes bring. That full-circle CFDA moment in 1992 really does say it all. Here was a designer who'd spent years being quietly inspired by a woman's understated, natural elegance. And there she was, decades later, physically handing him the highest honor in American fashion. It's the kind of moment you couldn't script if you tried. And there's a quieter detail that's easy to miss. Hepburn reportedly kept the same handful of trusted collaborators around her for most of her career, favoring long-term relationships over chasing whoever happened to be trendy. That loyalty is exactly the kind of consistency Lauren has spent decades trying to build into his own brand identity. So maybe the real question here is, in a world obsessed with more sequins, more logos, more everything, why does less keep winning in the end?
So, there you have it. 5 completely different people from 5 completely different worlds who apparently taught Ralph Lauren everything he knows about what real style actually looks like.
Not the loudest outfits, not the most expensive labels, but confidence, authenticity, and knowing exactly who you are. Diana's evolving elegance, McQueen's off-duty confidence, Jackie's clean American sophistication, Grant's quiet polish, Hepburn's understated glamour. None of it is about trends. It's about knowing yourself well enough to stop performing and just get dressed. Honestly, kind of a masterclass hiding in plain sight. If you enjoyed this one, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a deep dive like this one. And drop a comment letting me know which of these 5 icons actually surprised you the most. See you in the next video.